Huggins. I'm the education manager here at Actors Theater, and I am thrilled to welcome you to Hot Topics today. Today's panel is a little bit different. As you can see, it's not a traditional panel. We're going to be hosting a series of essentially TED Talks. We've got 4 really engaging presenters who are each going to be working a 12-minute speech about a hot topic in regional theater. Today you'll be hearing from Melissa Hines, who's going to be talking about how to market yourself without pissing anyone off. You're going to hear from Jonathan Ruiz, who's going to talk about how you really explain what it is you do in theater and how to define yourself as a theater artist. And finally, Janelle Dunn and Jenna are going to be talking about allyship for dummies. I'm really excited about all of these talks today. The format is going to be 3 TED Talks with our presenters. Please hold your questions, because at the end, you're going to have a chance to actually ask our presenters any burning questions you have. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up our first speaker. This is Melissa Hines. She is our marketing manager at Actors Theater. Please give a warm welcome to Melissa.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you. So I'm speaking to you today because I have had a lot of jobs over the course of my career. Some of them include working at a costume shop, renting Austin Powers costumes like early aughts, selling wedding gowns with bedazzled American flags on them after 9/11 when the patriotism was all the rage. I've been a substitute teacher. I've waited tables at Cracker Barrel. And most illustratively, I had this job once where I drove around in a car in rural Indiana and Ohio, and we would sell like wholesale toys out of the back of a trunk at strip clubs and used car lots. So I have had to reinvent myself a lot. Hi again, I'm Melissa, and I work here at Actors Theater, and I'm the marketing manager. So to get here, I studied acting and directing at Purdue Fort Wayne. It was not a fancy school. It wasn't considered the top program, but I tried to do as much as I possibly could while I was there. After that, I spent a year here as an acting apprentice, woo, and then I moved to New York City, where I worked for 9 years. So my first job in New York was at a temp agency, and they eventually placed me at this company called Marketing Evolution that does marketing analytics. And I got really lucky because I assisted their executive vice president, and this guy was a genius in the industry and had been for 40 years. So have you guys ever heard of the Army, old Army commercials, Be All That You Can Be? That was invented by Dave, who I worked for. That job also gave me the flexibility to audition for projects that really felt right for me as an actor in New York, and I got to be a little picky-choosy. So eventually, the acting work, I started getting acting work outside of New York City, and I really quickly realized that coming to New York City and establishing a home just to get up and leave for months at a time to work was really not my cup of tea. Just wasn't. So I left acting and I went back and started again, and I worked as an intern at the age of 26. So then I started working for a Broadway producer. They produced Hairspray and The Producers and many others, and that opened the door to a position at Broadway.com in their group sales department. And I sort of that's how I got into marketing, guys. So I really liked sales. That's a lot of what I was doing, but I really wanted to work for a company that was mission-driven, community-focused, was doing theater I believed in, so I came back to Louisville for this job. And so I'm going to talk to you today about marketing yourself, and we're going to do it by balancing yourself as a commodity, which you are when you're looking for work, and your own personal truth, as I did. So, what is this? Marketing is executing a strategy that will lead to a sale. So my job here is to sell tickets to shows. In order to do that, we have to present information that helps guide you to what we want you to do, what our goal is. Buy tickets. Bonus points if those goals and the strategy is anticipated communication, personal communication, and relevant communication. So I'll give you an example of that. There is an organic post on Facebook right now on the Actors Theater page that talks about a locals pass. Well, you can only buy that if you live in a certain county area around this theater. So it's living organically. You might scroll by it in your feed, but I am putting money behind a list to promote it into people's feeds who live here. So that's anticipated, relevant, personal communication. Those people, I'm paying for people to see the information I want for them to see. So for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to pretend you're a recent graduate and search for work. You're a theater graduate, okay? I can't speak to accountants, lawyers, whatever. So a job is your goal. Getting a job is your goal. So what you're going to do is you're going to do everything you can to make it easy for an employer to find those answers, why you are the best person for that job. So, put another way, we're going to guide people to the answer you want them to get through anticipated, personal, and relevant connections. Got it? Okay, so first things you need to think about is where are employers coming from? How can you connect personally to them, and how can what the information you're giving them feel relevant? How do they like to communicate? And then once you kind of figure that out, match it. So if they call you to talk about a job, call them back. Don't actually screen the call because you don't know the number and then text, I don't know who this is. Just don't, when you're looking for a job, don't do that. If they email you, reply back to an email. Don't pick up the phone and call them. That can feel very shocking, believe it or not. So, et cetera, et cetera. People entering the workforce today, you guys, actually have a bigger challenge than anybody ever before for multiple reasons, but I'm going to talk about one right now. Your bosses could come from 3 different generations, and those 3 different generations all live and breathe and function and communicate in very different ways. So, first ones are the baby boomers, like Oprah. So they're in their 50s and 60s, they're delaying retirement longer and longer, so they're going to be in the workforce probably for another 10 or 15 years. I would recommend to always, as such, have your phone number on your resume. They're going to want to call you. That's personal connection for them, is a voice on the phone. They may expect you to come in, even if you're not in their market. So if you're applying for a job outside of your own city, also be prepared to show up. Next ones are Generation X. Jay-Z, for example. They're going to be a hybrid. So they're going to be paper digital. So have your stuff online, email your stuff, but make it easy for them to print it off, make sure it looks good when it prints. I have a feeling Jay-Z, he gets a resume and prints it off and then writes his notes on it. So make sure that that's there. Also check your email frequently. This is a generation that started blurring the lines between work life and home life and is connected a lot. Think like Sheryl Sandberg. Millennials, Mark Zuckerberg, classic millennial boss. Invest in a website with all of your available resources and information and customize it. So, one resume does not fit all with someone like Mark Zuckerberg or even myself. Okay, so now we're going to get into some resume stuff. This is a 12-minute talk, so this is not a resume workshop. I'm just going to talk in broad strokes for you, for actors and administrators. Your resume tells a story of what you want people to see. So it's anticipated information and it's relevant information. More is not impressive. You've got to keep it relevant. And think about what's actually relevant for your specific job. It doesn't need to be chronological. Keep it personal, keep it relevant, okay? So let's look at an actor example. For example, if you're auditioning for Oklahoma, don't put a bunch of device work at the top of your resume. We will have no idea that you have the skills to be in Oklahoma. Unless you're auditioning for a punch-drunk theater company, Sleep No More style version of Oklahoma, in which case, yeah, elevate that stuff. Don't hide your college credits. I think this is all about standing in your truth. It's okay that you're currently in college or recently graduated from college. That's great. So when you say I was in Oklahoma and I played Ado Annie, and not that I did, I definitely did. And I did it at Williams Theater. Well, what is that? Well, that's the name of the theater building at my school. Just say you were the lead in your play at school. That's awesome. Okay, so here's an example of an actor who's currently at the Humana Festival, and this is, you probably can't see all this, but this is what I think is a good example. So this dude has his TV credits at the top. And so this is also pulled off his website, okay? So this is a general, kind of his general resume. But what I see here is a combination of work and period styles. So he has a recurring on Boardwalk Empire, and then he's got The Little Foxes, and then I see Private Lives, and then I see some classical work, so I know that he facilitates language and period style as well. And then I see that he's got a bunch of like new work elevated to the top. Boom, he books the Humana Festival. Okay, administrators, if you are a recent college graduate, just keep your resume to 1 page. Again, more is not impressive. Measure impact. So if you can think of a statistic, how your potential contributions have elevated your work with the team, I want to see that. And also, don't send an actor resume for an administrative job. Again, like that's all about living in your truth. So here's an example of a communications apprentice who worked with me last season. And this is all the work she did at Actors Theater. She used a lot of verbs, which I think is great, like spearheaded, managed, crafted, sourced, blah, blah, you know. And look, she measured her impact, successfully executed 7 digital marketing campaigns with a peak ROI of almost 2,000%. So this resume got her the job of running social media at Show Score in New York. So let's move on, websites. This is not a website workshop, personal branding workshop. I'm just going to give you some real hot takes here on websites. First of all, websites are free. You can make a pretty website for free these days, and it's easy to make. You don't have to be a coding genius to do it. I'm going to show you some resources for free websites at the end of this. Okay, so first, everyone just like get a website. Just do it. Have a point of view on it. So that means like who you are, and don't apologize about it. If you don't know who you are, or you want to explore more than one thing, I encourage you to do that, because this website will give you digital space to demonstrate that. I will say, be prepared to back it up. If you are a multi-hyphenate, if you're an actor, director, producer, make sure that you have acting credits, directing credits, and producing credits. Or that you've assisted directed and you are showing, and you're like leading workshops. I don't know, like just make sure that you can back it up, you can back that truth up. If you can't yet, work on it, and then add that page onto your website later. Have a resume for each of those things that you want to promote. It's confusing sometimes as an employer to see you're applying for a marketing job, but like you've been a stage manager and here's your acting credits, and like I'm not really seeing you demonstrating ways in which you actually want to be a marketer. It's buried. You can use those credits. We can talk about spin, like offline. We can use those credits to demonstrate your propensity why you would be a good marketer. And then don't mix. Demonstrate what you can do. So like singers, oops, I haven't been clicking. Okay, singers, link to performances on YouTube if you sing. If you want to go out and like be in musicals, like do a cabaret somewhere and set up a camera, or just like get in a studio with a pianist and record it. It's easy. Administrators, show examples of your work. Like if you've crafted an email or a social media post or run a Twitter feed for a company, like just screenshot them and put them up there. It's really important. Make sure it looks great on a phone, because that is the way, that is the future. These laptops are going away. Over 60% of first touch communication is done over a phone. So if you're emailing your resume to somebody, or you're sending a point of interest, or you're linking to your website, they're gonna read it on a phone first. So make sure it doesn't look like a jumbled mess. And there's a resource for that I can show you in a minute. And then have a clear call to action. What do you want people to do when they're on your site? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to call you, read your work? You can set up a blog if so. Write in on your site, follow you on social media, like show it. And then shout out to your community. Credit your photographers. It shows that you're a generous individual. Shout out to friends who, if you're an actor and you know a great vocal coach, like credit them. If they coached your work, credit them. So here's a good example of a website I love. So this is someone I've worked with. Oh, look who she is. It's more than one thing. It's hard to see, but it really is more than one thing. Oh, what does she do? PR and writing. Awesome. What does she want you to do? Follow her on social. She literally says that, and then provides links with which to do so. Social media. So again, this is not a social media in the digital age workshop. I don't have time for that. But let's all acknowledge the fact that this is the digital age. Why do people care about your social media footprint? One, it proves you're a real person. We want to hire people, make a connection with people, with others in the workplace, because we spend so much time here. You don't need to be active on all of the platforms. If it's really strictly personal, and like your mom is always like, posting bathtub pictures of you when you were 2, like, just, it's okay to like lock it down. But if you want to participate, join the conversation. So actors, designers, technicians, when you're working, use a company and shows hashtags, like connect with the company you're working with, ingratiate yourselves to them, help them with their content. All of this is anticipated and personal content. Woo. Great, hot takes on social media. So again, there's not enough time to get into everything, but Facebook. The most important commerce tool for theaters to reach audiences is Facebook. That's where we at Actors Theater spend the majority of our advertising spend, is on Facebook. For actors and things, think about the mutual friend tool, and let's not negate the, yes, Facebook's annoying, okay, like we can all agree, but like, let's just think about like, the fact that everyone's on there, and you're probably on there too, and think about the mutual friend tool. So if you're curious about a theater company, or like you want to audition for something, like go to your mutual friends and see who's also worked at that theater, and then maybe like ask them about it. So it's a really powerful tool actually. Insti, it's becoming the most important for personal brand identity. So think about like how you can use Instagram. I would say like, I don't know, the irony is that my Instagram is private, but isn't there kid pictures on there? So use stories as a way to show people what it's like to hang out with you. I think that's a really important for actors, like you're a cool, fun person who's like engaged in your community, blah, blah, blah. Stories are a really great way to do that. Twitter is a great news source. I would say really only promote Twitter if you're actively using Twitter. Think about like going to somebody's Twitter feed and like all they ever do is like complain at Delta. So like don't do that. Or do that, but then just like don't promote it. And Snapchat, I promise like no one's gonna bother you here about a job because it's not profitable. And everyone's favorite, LinkedIn. Actors don't, like, just don't. Administrators, let's see. Yay, great stalking tool. Just remember that they can probably see you when you're stalking them, but I really don't think it matters because everyone's LinkedIn profile is public. So I use it as a way to say like, oh, I want to be in this job someday, and then I look at that person who's in that job, and I look at their resume and I figure out how they got there. Oh, maybe that's a potential path for me, or maybe not. So that's a really powerful way to use that. I would also say like don't link people you really don't know. It's just like you don't need to have your personal network filled with strangers. Okay, cold calling. I don't want you to be frightened by cold calling. If you don't know somebody who works at this theater or whatever, like, or in this city, it's okay to ask somebody who might or who does. So I remember starting out, and my parents would be like, they're such baby boomers, they'd be like, well, just pick up the phone and call and tell them you want to be on Broadway, Melissa. And like, well, like, where are the numbers, Dad? So now cold calling is not like, you know, it's an email, and that's okay. Like, it's actually like amazing because you can read an email or not, but most people probably do. So this is making your connection that you're trying to make personal. You are going the extra mile to make this personal. So think about the chain before you do this. Everybody has so many asks. So you have only so many asks. So if it's, make this ask of somebody if you know it's not going to damage them, and burn one of those asks for them. So like just be generous in that chain of asks. Think about that. Okay, so here's how you do it. You make this really short. It's like 3 basic sentences. It's like who you are, why you're reaching out to them, how they can help you, and then you're going to follow up with them after you do connect with them, and then you're going to stay in touch with them because now you have this connection, now you have this network. It's amazing. Okay, so here's an actual example of, I actually did this. So I was trying to move to Louisville, and I hadn't worked in Louisville in 9 years, and my connections here were pretty tenuous at best. So I wrote to somebody who I remembered from Actors Theater, but like we didn't like have drinks or hang out or anything. We just literally existed in the same building. So I said like, hey, we worked together briefly while I was an apprentice at Actors Theater. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a network in a new city. Would you be open to taking an informational interview with me? If so, I can be reached this way. Here's my resume. Thanks for your consideration. I didn't talk about like how great I am or like all my experience. It was just like, this person's busy, you have to think about that. And if they want to read my resume, great. Anyway, she responded within 15 minutes. She took that call with me and then connected me with every major arts leader in the city. People want to help. So, in conclusion, when you're marketing yourself, be a human. Be honest about who you are today. It's okay if you don't want to put a label on yourself just yet. That's okay. Digital tools will help you do that. Find a connection with others across all generations. That's how you're going to build community. As you enter the workforce, you're going to start working with people who are more than 3 to 4 years older than you. Express your gratitude and think anticipated, personal, and relevant. And also remember that nothing lasts forever and you can change your mind, because I did. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Melissa, for that speech. The first time she gave me a demo of that, I was taking notes because I learned so much from her, so I hope you did as well. Our next presenter is Jonathan Ruiz. He's here to help you answer Aunt Mary's question at next Thanksgiving dinner. What is it that you do? Please welcome Jonathan. He is the artistic coordinator of the PTC.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good. All right. So as Betsy said, my name is Jonathan Ruiz. I'm the artistic coordinator for the PTC, and that's my face. I grew up in Phoenix, but I moved at an early age to Denver, where I found my artistic home at the Bud Theater, where I worked with Equinox Theater Company as their production stage manager, where we specialize in camp theater and cult classics because most of the city was really high. I then left Denver to work at the Santa Fe Opera, where I apprenticed as part of the property's run crew department. And I got to work on fun plays like Steve Jobs' The Opera, because we need it in the world. Now, I work here at Actors Theater with these guys, the professional training company, as the artistic coordinator. Some of you are probably wondering, what is that you do exactly, right? Because and by show of hands, how many of you have had that question when you're at a party, at a cocktail party, at dinner with your parents, right? And it's like, it can be really difficult to answer because like, at the moment, I always find myself trying to justify and validate what I do in one sentence to someone who maybe doesn't have any experience, or maybe they were in a play in middle school and it was really life-changing, but it doesn't really translate too much with what I do. So, for folks that are in the industry, I usually say, as an artistic coordinator, I'm a long-term stage manager. Except now, instead of light cues and calling entrance cues, I call my friend Doc King in production in company management. And that helped me like get people into town and get everything settled in. But there's something unsatisfying about keeping something like that, right? Because especially it's difficult when I have to explain it to someone that's not in theater. How do I tell them and explain it that? So usually I'd like to say that I work with spreadsheets and feelings, and that's how I try to define myself in a shorthand way when I really just want to get out of a conversation. But I usually am leaving those conversations really dissatisfied because that's such an awkward way to explain what I do. It's true, but it's an awkward way to explain what I do still nonetheless. And look at here. Early in my career, what I decided to do when I try to explain to people what I do in theater, why it's important, I decided to think more holistically about what it is I do as a stage manager or as an artistic coordinator. So the way that I explain it now is I facilitate and oversee the logistical aspects of theater to help others execute their artistic goals. It kind of sounds like jargon, but that's the way that I like to say and express myself as to who I am, to tell others why it is important that I'm a part of this collaboration. Thinking outside of titles and tasks has helped me because it really reassures me that there's a purpose to why I'm here. It reminds me that there's a reason why I collaborate with others, because you define who you are. Right now, it might be really difficult as you're about to enter the workforce when you're looking at jobs on offstage jobs or art search, where you're looking at these titles and you're really not seeing that reflected in your resume. But the thing is that there's probably something there that applies to you. You just haven't done it yet. And that's understandable. You've been in college this whole time. You haven't probably have a big hand in development. You haven't been able to do the marketing for your school because there's someone that already does that. But you have agency as to who you are as a theater artist. Don't forget that. You get to say to tell the world, this is who I am. I'm the type of person that realizes a design. I'm the person that is the rallier for other people. Because you're here for a reason. There's something that brought you here. I love Excel spreadsheets. And I could definitely do that with an accounting firm. But there's a reason why I decided to do that here in theater. And that's because I want to collaborate and I want to work with others. The important part is that when you're about to go out into the world, you don't have to apply for every single job that's out there. Because every single job that's out there may not speak to you. You may come here to the Humana Festival and you're like, new work, this is what I'm all about. This is what I want to do, new plays, and I want to do new things. But you also might think, no, the classics, that's what I want to do. And that's okay. You can discern which place you want to make your artistic home. Whether that's doing bloody theater like Evil Dead the Musical, or doing fancy things like not Evil Dead the Musical. Because you're going to go out into the world and it's going to be really intimidating because you're going to look at all these places and you're going to think like, oh, where do I fit? But you get to decide who you are. That's really the best way that you're going to be able to find places to really grow as a person. Don't think that just because you haven't done it, you cannot go. The reality is that some of you may not continue in theater as a career, and that's okay. Whether it's because you decided that once you're in the world, you're like, hey, I don't actually want to be an actor, but the thing that I'm really good at is telling stories and conveying messages to other people. That's really beautiful, and don't let go of that. If you decide to leave theater or to change career paths in your job, don't disregard the training that you've had and the experiences that you've had, because people look for that. If you're the hype man that's always rallying for a group, people want you in their party. You need to go out into the world and find your golden girls. Find your rose. Find the people that are there who want you there as part of their team, and even though it might be pretty, if it's throwing shade at them and telling them that they're not doing a good job, guess what? People need that. But so definitely don't feel that you are just limited to what your experiences are, because there is so much wealth in there. And there's something of who you are, and just take some time and think about who you are, so that way other people can get to know who you are. Thanks for being a friend.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. All right, 2 down and only 1 more talk to go. This is a really great one. We've got 2 presenters, so 2 for the price of 1. Janelle is currently serving as our education associate in the education department. We get to work together. She is an actor, director, and teaching artist extraordinaire, and joining her on stage is Jenna. She's currently a member of our acting Apprentice company. You probably saw her this weekend in You Across From Me. She's also a theater administrator. Yeah, give her a round of applause. She's also done a lot of work in theater administration at theaters like Woolly Mammoth, Cherry Lane, and Barrow Street. And we had the pleasure of serving together on this year's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion cohort. So please welcome them to talk about allyship for dummies.
Hi, I am Janelle Renee Dunn, and fuck, I'm black.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenna, and fuck, I'm an actor.
The first time I had that feeling, I was a senior at Berea College. I told you they were coming.
Oh, yes. As a first-generation immigrant, and coming to the States with my parents who are also immigrants, I had to come out to my parents as an artist.
It was customary at Berea College that the final show of the season was our senior thesis project. So we would have a class in the fall, and then we would produce the last show of the season. If you were interested in directing, you could propose the show that the seniors would do. I proposed The Colored Museum by George C. Wolfe. And a fellow white male student proposed The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie. They chose The Mousetrap. To say that I was pissed is an understatement. I was angry, and it was this anger that was on top of more anger, that was layered with this disgust, that was sprinkled with this sense of brokenness, because it was more than the fact that they didn't pick me. It was that there hadn't been a playwright of color on the main stage while I was there, and I don't think before I got there. It was the fact that I was the only student of color in my class. It was the fact that in my 5 years there, the only playwrights of color we read was August Wilson and Susan Laurie Parks, and that was just because she had just won the Pulitzer Prize for being the first Black woman to win for Top Dog Underdog. And so it compounded, and it didn't feel right, but I had Deborah. And Deborah is this abnormally peppy but serious Republican white woman who not only cried for me, but cried with me. For me, Deborah was the prototype.
My parents grew up in the Cultural Revolution in China, and they were persecuted, and my grandparents as well, for being intellectuals. So needless to say, when we all came to the States, they were very wary of artistic expression and really embracing the freedom of expression that was available here. So growing up, even though I have always wanted to be an artist and to pursue a career in the arts, I was not allowed to really participate growing up. And whenever we were having like economic pressures as a family, I was always pulled out of those activities first. So going to college, I wasn't allowed to study theater. I wasn't allowed to pursue it extracurricularly. I was always threatened to be pulled out if I did, and was constantly being monitored by my professors who were enlisted as well. And so for a long time, I really tried to follow their instructions and just not pursue this career until I finally met a friend, Lori, who was a theater major and saw how much I wanted to do this. And she encouraged me to pursue this path despite family pressures.
You know, as Jenna and I were sharing our stories with one another, we asked ourselves, why is it about Deborah and Lori that holds them so dear to our hearts? And we realized that for us, they were allies. So as we kept talking, we realized that Deborah and Lori followed what we like to call the 5 steps to allyship for dummies.
A how-to guide on creating a safe space for marginalized identities.
Step 1. You have to check yourself before you wreck yourself. So we all have privilege. It's okay. A man, typically white, has more privilege than a woman, say, of any race. Me, as a married woman with a kid who works in a nonprofit setting, I have more privilege than a single mother who works retail. Even Blue Ivy Carter has more privilege than, well, everybody in this room. Look at it. And that's okay. You have to accept your privilege. And once you accept your privilege, embrace it, and then move to a point of intentionality. Because then, once you are being intentional with it, you can use your privilege for power.
And to find out what your privilege is, you have to first hold up the mirror to yourself and ask yourself, what am I choosing to see, and how am I actively working to broaden that perspective? Ask yourself, what am I seeing? What am I reading? Who am I talking to, and what kinds of conversations am I having with these people? So let's all just take a moment and look around the room right now. Yeah. Who is here? Yeah.
Who's not here?
Who isn't here who should be? Yeah. Our job as allies and as advocates is to ask that question and to find out how we can get those people into the room who should be here.
This year at Humana, actors did that by making sure that we cast shows that had a lot of women behind it. We have 5 of the 6 plays are written by women. There are a slew of women directors, and as you see culturally, there are many shades on our stages in this festival.
Yep, there's also equal representation in terms of stage management and design.
So once you come to this point, you have to realize that Okay, now you have to work. But with work, we don't want to hear any excuses, which brings us to step 2. You better work. And we don't want to hear any goddamn excuses. Excuses, we've heard them.
But Janelle, no students of color come to our audition.
Jenna, I don't know many theater practitioners of color. Listen, A Raisin in the Sun is not the only play that has substantial black characters.
David Henry Wong is not the only Asian writer in the industry. They do. Get to know them.
Yes.
Do your homework.
Do your homework. You reach out. Google is your friend. All you have to do is search playwrights of color. Boom. There's actually a Google Doc floating around right now that has a list of working Black and Latina female directors. So.
Yeah. And it's also about reaching out to those communities if you haven't had any contact or experience with them before, and just making an introduction and learning about what it is that actually speaks to them.
Yes, which leads us to step 3.
Token is only a character on stage play.
Listen, we have to move our theaters from a colorblind to a color conscious mentality. Color blindness says that you don't recognize the person. My blackness is that special ingredient that makes me me. So when you're saying you're blind to it, that means you're saying you're blind to me. Whereas with color consciousness, you are saying that not only do you recognize the historic discrimination of minorities, not only in the arts, but also in this country, you are working to change it, and you realize that by adding a person of color on your stage, you are enhancing the story that is being told.
For example, Actors Theater has been producing Dracula on its main stage season for 20 plus years. And this and a large number of the audience is composed of student matinees, or the students who come to those. And this year, our artistic producer, Emily Tarquin, sat down and had a candid conversation with our Director of Education, Jane B. Jones, about the composition of the students who were coming. And they realized that a large number of the students of the schools had a large minority student body. And they realized what a disservice they could be doing by not having people of color on stages for many of these students for whom this is their first experience in the theater. So as a result, this year for the first time, actors cast 3 people of color in the production.
Now, we did get some pushback for it. It's set in Victorian England. There are no black people in Victorian England. It's a play about a vampire. Vampires exist, but come on. So you have to realize that as theater artists, our job is to serve our communities for the greater good. And sometimes it's going to be difficult. And when it gets difficult, that's when you need to be moved to step 4. Be the eagle. Eagles are fearless creatures. If a storm is coming, they don't run and hide. They spread their wings and they fly right into the storm. Now, I don't know the whole extent of the storm that Deborah had to go through when I was there, because I was like a one-woman Black Lives Matter parade in the theater department. I was calling out privilege left and right. I was like, no, you're stepping on me because I'm black. But, she was there. She was in the fight. Not only did she have to hold my hand, but she also had to hold the hand of the student who just wanted to direct a murder mystery. She also she was there and gave me the space to stand in front of my faculty and question and bring in all of the books that I had read in all of my theater classes and say, why are these the only 2 people of color that I've read? You are telling me that I don't matter and that my stories and the people who look like me don't matter. And she had to say, this girl is right. Why are these the only ones that we're doing? And why aren't we doing something better and doing more to serve all of our students?
But the thing is, we can't be afraid of conflict because conflict can lead to progress. This work is difficult. We acknowledge that. This work is messy and the language is constantly changing, but we can't be afraid of it. We have to lean into the conflict because that's the only way that we're going to achieve real progress.
And that brings us to step 5. Recognize the progress.
Yeah, so just because a step may be small doesn't mean that it's going to go unnoticed and that it can't have a ripple effect on people around you. And in fact, incremental progress is more likely to be sustainable because it's taken one step at a time. Lori was the first person to really encourage me to pursue this path, and even though I had a lot of resistance, her encouragement is what helped me to be able to come out to my parents as an artist, and eventually, even though it took a lot of negotiation and a lot of resolution of conflict, now they are fully supportive of my artistic career, and I've been working professionally for the last 6 years.
And one of the things that I love about Deborah is that when she gets an idea, she goes full steam ahead. And she was already moving to a color conscious mentality before this all happened. But then when it happened and we started talking about it, she took it up a notch. Not only did she create an independent study for me to direct Top Dog Underdog in our Black Box Theater, but she also curated a winter session class of all Black playwrights. So I learned about Lynn Nottage and Stephen Sapp of Universes. And when a faculty member said that they were retiring, she was very vocal that the next professor that took that position needed to be a person of color. And that was in 2005. And since then, there has been a person of color on staff since. Their seasons are more diverse, the readings are more diverse, and the class, they're more diverse. And they're beautiful. And it's because Deborah was that ally for me.
Yeah, so as theater artists, we have to ask ourselves the question. We have to hold up the mirror to ourselves and reflect not only ourselves, but also the world around us. And this world is diverse. This world is composed of lots of different shapes and sizes. And if we're not seeing those people on our stages,
off our stages,
in administrative roles,
in positions of leadership, then we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this? And if you're asking yourself that question, then welcome to step 1.
To the stage, and we'll have a brief Q&A. For those of you who are like, this hot topics went by so fast, I'd love to hear it again. Guess what? You're in luck, because our own Philip Allgaier has been taping the entire time, and it will be available on Actors Theater's website in a very short amount of time so that you can check it out and you can share it with friends on social media and make sure that everyone gets to experience the amazing talks we had today. So while we're bringing out some chairs for our presenters, let's get some questions going. All right, so I saw 1, 2, and then 3. We'll go in that order. So, young woman in the back in the teal scarf.
Hi.
That's you. All right, what's your question?
All right, so my question is for, oh my gosh, names, I'm sorry, hold on. Melissa, yes, Melissa. So, hi Melissa.
Hi.
I just had this question about when you were talking about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And how you're talking about, it's not so good for actors, it's better for administrators, that kind of thing. And then you were going on to talk about if you're interested in a particular career and you're interested in the work that somebody's doing, you're like, I want to be that, I want to do what they're doing. How do you suggest we follow the trail of breadcrumbs as an actor? Because I find that's very difficult. I do that all the time. I go in these little rabbit holes on the internet trying to go, I want to follow this person's work, but I can't find what they've done. Unless they've done a lot of things for film, then I can go to IMDb and I can check that out. But theater actors, I have a very hard time finding sometimes that path.
Yeah.
So what's your recommendation for that?
That's a great question. I would say very generally, IBDB is a great resource for like Broadway, right? Like the Broadway actors. But often you can go to like, ooh, this feedback is killing me. It's like you can go to, oh Jesus. I think I have a Q&A on my face. You could go to like The Humans by Steve Carell was like the big hit Broadway play, right? So like who was in that cast who wasn't a star? Look at them and then look and see if they have a website. They probably should or probably do. Or you can also go on Playbill and read their Playbill bios, and then read the theater companies they've worked at, and then go to those theater companies and read their, and see how those bios have evolved. So you can like do some like, deep stalking through those means. But I would say on the whole, some of those like workhorse Broadway actors who are in those plays in the minor roles and understudying are the workhorse actors you're going to see on stages like this and have those careers you want to lead yourself to.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that question. All right, who is number 2? All right, right down here.
Hello, this is another question for Melissa. So a couple weeks ago, I actually applied somewhere in Chicago, and I've been really debating back and forth to myself. So I haven't heard anything, which means I haven't even heard like, oh, we don't want you. So I've been debating back and forth, like, should I call or should I just email? It kind of sounds like leaning more towards just emailing them to check in.
Yeah, definitely. Or like, you could either, I don't know like any of the details, but yeah, I would definitely email over call.
Okay.
And maybe also do some of that Facebook mutual friend stalking to see like who has either been in through those doors or is currently in those doors to see if like they know anything about the hiring process. Sometimes we have these aspirational hiring processes where we're like, we're gonna hire somebody in 2 weeks, and then like 6 weeks later we're like, we're gonna look at the resumes tomorrow. So also like just kind of know that and give yourself a little forgiveness, but also don't be afraid to be assertive.
Great. Thanks. Thank you for that. All right, number 3 right here.
My question is for Janelle, and the talented woman in the blue dress who was awesome last night in the play at 11. I really want to make my work inclusive and have people of different ethnicities from my own, but I'm also nervous about the exact right way to go about it. Like, do you feel like just writing any ethnicity and writing for the character is good, or how, as white Jewish American, like, what should I do to to have that color conscious mentality? Like, do I just talk to my friends or people of color? Like,
So first step, don't say, oh, I need to write characters and they need to be this color, unless that's part of the story. For instance, if you were writing a play about the Jewish freedom riders who worked with civil rights workers, leaders at that time, then yes, you have to be specific. But if you're interested in the story, just write the story and allow the characters to come alive on the page. And then when you go to the audition process, you can put as a playwright in the play, like, I want to see a diverse, I want to see a color spectrum on stage. I want this. It doesn't matter what ethnicity this character is. That's when you're getting into color consciousness. It's saying that it's open. It doesn't have to be a white male 30s.
right, like the best person.
Right, the best person, and then advocate for that as a playwright. So if somebody is producing your play and you see that all the people they're bringing before you look the same, then you're like, no, we're doing it wrong. We need to reach out, and then that's when you have to reach out to friends, connect. Like who knows who. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You want to answer?
Oh yeah, no, everything that you said, and then that there can be a lot of power in partnership as well. And it's such a fine balance to know when to just give space for someone versus when to try and create that opportunity for someone. And it sounds like you're navigating that very well, and it's an ongoing conversation probably with your community, because like each community probably Art Equity basically, who does this kind of training, always comes in with the sense that the community knows what solution is best, and it's a matter of working together to find that.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. We'll take 3 more. 1, 2, and then 3 right here. All right.
So, as a future theater educator, what is a good way to help make my theater space more inclusive for everybody?
When you're one of it is reading. Reading is fundamental. And just make it like, oh, we're going to read this play, and the playwright happens to be so-and-so. You know, for me, I had to move from a place of I'm black, I'm a black this, to I am a person, I'm a director, I'm an actor who happens to be black. It's just an added bonus to me. And so like my viewpoint is coming from a different place. So as an educator, it's important to make sure that like your readings are diverse, it's just part of the normalcy. It's not we're reading the first black female playwright, here you go. You're reading a play, and this is the color of the person that it's like. Kids are extremely smart and resilient, and they're open, and they view color not as, oh, you're this and I'm this or that. They just know like the shades. I was teaching an elementary class, and one day I had she was so cute, this little white girl, and one of the students was missing, and she goes, Miss Janelle, where's the brown boy? You know, because she was missing him, and she wanted to know if he was okay, and he was. So that's what they'll see, and then it just becomes normal. It becomes the part of life. So it just as much as, and show them show clips, shows movies, plays, take them and immerse them in as much eclecticness of stories as possible.
Yeah, the playwrights themselves also often have very informative critical views about it. Like August Wilson's The Ground on Which I Stand is just a seminal piece of text about African American theater and the need for it, and articulating ideas that we are still talking about now.
Great. All right, number 2 in the back.
My question is for the 2 gals in the middle. I would love some feedback or some advice on how to have those difficult conversations with your professors, with the director of your program, when you're tackling an issue where there's obviously friction, but you don't want to burn those bridges. These are professionals who are not only helping you become a young working professional, but yeah, you want to show respect and honor them, but you're also challenging them. How do you how?
So sometimes you just gotta call people out. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta say, listen here, you're being a bigot. Pretty much. But you have to, it's about learning how to gauge your battles. At the time when this thing with Berea went on, I can't express how much I love Deborah, because I was a handful. Like, I called my entire class racist and was angry, and then I started throwing stuff, and that's when Deborah was like, okay, girl. But you gotta have that person who backs you up, so that way it's like good cop, bad cop, in a sense, in that you could say I was the bad cop because I'm like yelling and saying everything that was on my mind, and Deborah was the good cop because she was basically going back and restating what I was saying for the ear, to be palatable. And so that's one of the things that I've learned as I've aged, is that you have to learn how to speak in a way that people will understand. Like right now, we're in a time where there's a lot of friction and conflict. And like, for instance, if you take the gun debate, there are a lot of people who are on the same side, but they're like, no, but they don't realize that they're on the same side. Like, we're all against, for the most part I understand, is that the majority of people are against semi-automatic weapons. But for staunch gun advocates, all they hear is, oh, you're trying to take my guns. And it's like, no, we're just trying to make people more safe. It's okay to have a gun. If you need a gun to protect yourself, then use it. But you don't need a semi-automatic weapon to go hunting or to protect yourself. So it's navigating that and then finding that person who is your ally, because you can't do this alone. You can't. You can't do theater alone. So anything that takes work is going to take somebody. So finding finding that person who understands you and understands where you're coming from, that's.
Yeah, and people are, yeah, there are going to be people who disagree, and you know, relationships can become fractured and they're going to fall away, and that's something that we just have to be okay with, because you know, when we're fighting for something that we really believe in, and sometimes, you know, when words are not being heard, we have to lead by example. So if you know the author or the kind of play that you want to see is not being taught in your curriculum, you can produce it yourself. You can do it through student theater. You can just host a reading. You can organize a conversation or ask for, you know, that kind of dialogue. I think one way to really start to broach the subject is to ask the question, how can we have a discussion about this, and not just privately, but also publicly.
Thank you.
Great. And we've got, Abby just let me know, we've got 5 minutes left, so this will be our last question.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Would you like one, or I can go quickly?
Let's start with 1 and see if we've got time for 2.
Sure thing. Janelle, I wanted to ask you, how can Black people further our levels of allyship with white people and other people of color?
One, as Black people, we have to realize that our story is not the only story. Like, Jenna and I, we had a lot of discussions. It was like, how do you identify? First we had to start with, how do you identify yourself? You know, for me, I am very vocal about racial issues, and because for me, when I step outside, my Blackness is the first thing that people are going to see. My being a female may register later, but first it's about when I go into a store and I start to get followed. It's not because I'm a woman, it's because I'm Black. Pure and simple. So as people of color, we have to come together as well and be each other's allies, because we understand. Like, Jenna was like, yeah, I've been discriminated against, and this is, and find a way to give each other space, because our talk started completely different, and we had to push each other to get to our truth so that we can stand here, and that's one way we can do. And then talking to our white friends and saying, listen, or people who identify who identify as white or have a different preconceived notion of color, saying, this is how I feel and this is how it perceives, so how can we have that conversation and realize that, you know what, I still like you as a person. I may not agree with everything you say, but we're still going to talk about it. I'm not going to just say, I'm not talking to you anymore because, oh, you called me colored. I'm like, whoa, first check it. And then let's talk about why you're still using this word. And it could just be because their culture is different, you know? And they come from a different country, and so that is just,
Yeah, what we realized is that we are really working in partnership, because even though our stories are very different, we are working together on this collective effort, you know, because we have faced similar kinds of exclusion, and we are stronger if we stand together.
Great, thank you. So we are just about out of time. I want to thank you guys for being here for Hot Topics. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Let's give another round of applause.